Welcome back to Scott Loves RPGs. Today we're diving deep into Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles, the newly released, much anticipated remaster of the legendary tactical RPG. 28 years. That's how long fans have waited for a definitive revival of Final Fantasy Tactics. Today, I'm massively excited to walk you through the Ivalice Chronicles, how it revisits the original, what's new, and whether it truly lives up to its name in modern times. Before we talk about the remaster, we need to set the stage for the original, which started it all. Final Fantasy Tactics first launched in Japan in 1997 for the PlayStation 1, later localised in 1998. It was a bold departure, a tactical RPG born from the minds of Yasumi Matsuno, director and writer, Hironobu Sakaguchi, producer, and Hiroyuki Ito, designer. The setting? The world of Ivalice, a crafted medieval/fantasy land where class, politics and religious intrigue collide. The story follows Ramza, a cadet from a noble line, and his lowborn friend Delita. And over the course of the game, they're drawn into the Lion War, machinations of the Church of Glabados, and the monstrous threat of the Lucavi, demons tied to the Zodiac Stones. Gameplay wise, Tactics combined beautiful isometric 3D maps, rotatable and zoomable, a grid system, and a deeply flexible job system. Units could adopt classes like Knight, Thief, Time Mage, Summoner, and so on, mastering abilities across jobs to customise builds. It got high praise on release. Critics lauded its strategic depth, plot maturity, and ambitious presentation, though some worried about hardware limitations and cramped battlefields. In 2007, Final Fantasy Tactics The War of the Lions Remastered/Enhanced Edition released on the PSP, adding cutscenes, new characters like Balthier, a revised translation, and widescreen support. So fans have had that enhanced baseline for years. But the Ivalice Chronicles sets out to do more than polish. It attempts to reconcile old and new, fidelity and modernisation. The team behind the Ivalice Chronicles made a conscious decision: give players two modes of experience. Classic mode. This is effectively the PS1 original, with script updates. Think of it as the pure preservation track, for purists who want the same pacing, structure and feel. In Classic mode, they also added an autosave function and fixed certain bugs to make it more reliable. Enhanced mode. This is the remastered experience. New visuals, smoothed pixel art plus subtle touches, full voice acting, improved UI, quality of life tweaks, and a reworked script that smooths dialogue but retains the original's tone and beats. In this mode, you'll see new in-battle lines, better menu flows, and modern touches that reduce friction. Importantly, they did not include the extra jobs or characters from War of the Lions. The team's rationale? These additions were not part of the original, and they wanted to preserve that original arc. The developers even rebuilt large chunks of the game from scratch, because the original source code was lost. They reconstructed logic by comparing various versions, PS1, PSP, mobile, and by referring to community archives. So even though it's a remaster, it's almost a recreation guided by archival work. Okay, what's new? What's improved? Let's break down the key enhancements the Ivalice Chronicles brings, and also where it treads carefully so as not to break the magic. Quality of life and UX upgrades. Autosave, a modern must. No more fear of losing hours to a crash or forgetting to save. Battle speed up/fast forward. When things drag, you can accelerate the flow. It's not full auto resolve, but it helps move the pacing. Restart/withdraw from battles. Easier resets if a strategy misfires. Shop and equipment previews from world map. You can see what items are sold in towns without loading menus. Turn order UI/delay indicators. Improved clarity over who's acting next and how long spells/abilities will delay order. Better job tracking and progression screens, the interface to plan your growth path is cleaner, improved menu shortcuts / navigation, fewer layers, more intuitive menu flows, audio and script overhaul, full voice acting across main dialogue and many cutscenes. Voiceovers breathe life into characters. Updated script / additional dialogue. The team rewrote lines to flow more naturally, sometimes adding new in-battle exchanges, though the core beats remain intact. Retaining original OST. The classic soundtrack is largely preserved, as music is central to the memory and tone. Visual and rendering enhancements. Smoothing and upscaling sprites. The pixel art is refined, but they aim to retain the nostalgic charm. Better lighting / effects. Subtle graphical polish around spells, shadows, particle effects. Multiple visual presets to let purists or modern fans pick what flavour of visual they like. New and expanded content. Sound novels / side stories. The remaster includes sound novel side episodes, which hadn't been officially localised before. Slightly altered ending. One of the most talked about changes. The remaster resolves some of the ambiguity in the original's ending. I won't mention what that contains due to obvious spoilers, but it gives more clarity on the aftermath of the final events. No War of the Lions additions. The extra jobs, characters like Balthier etc. from the PSP version are not included in the base narrative, though some fans speculate they may be added later as DLC or updates. Let me walk through what it feels like to play the Ivalice Chronicles, and where it might trip over its own ambition. First, it still feels like Final Fantasy Tactics. The rhythm of job experiments, tactical positioning, manipulating terrain and height, those mechanics are preserved faithfully. The map still looks like mini dioramas, each stage with quirks, bridges, walls, choke points, elevation, but the improvements smooth friction. Early on, I could more confidently plan job progress without menu dread. The turn order UI helped me foresee when a big spell's delay would push me dangerously. The voice acting added emotional weight to scenes I'd replayed via text for decades. One interesting tension is, how much modernisation do you allow before you dilute the old? Sometimes the smoother visual transitions felt like they blurred pixel texture character. Some longtime fans have remarked that small quirks like Ramza's animated backslide in the intro were subtly censored. A shadow now covers it to smooth things out. Also, the exclusion of War of the Lions content surprised some. If you came to the remaster assuming all extras would be included, you might feel a tinge of why not? But from a design purity standpoint, I respect the idea of anchoring to the original. Critically, the new ending has stirred debate. To many, removing that ambiguity is a relief fans had speculated for years about. But for others, that ambiguity was part of the mythos. The remaster confirms exactly what happens next. In short, as a player returning, I felt honoured by the upgrade. As a newcomer, I think it's a strong, accessible entry into a classic. The friction is reduced, but the grit is still there. So how's the reception so far? Pretty robust. On Steam, the Ivalice Chronicles launched with an 88% very positive user rating, with fans praising the faithful recreation, polished visuals, voice work, and the option to play classic. Game Informer gave it a glowing review, calling it a historic undertaking, awarding it 9.25 out of 10, praising both modes and the inclusion of the sound novels. Critics generally highlight that, while not a radical overhaul, the remaster strikes a strong balance. It's not a full remake, but it modernises in smart, respectful ways. Some critiques. Price overreach. Some longtime fans feel charging full retail for what is partly a remaster, vs full remake, is steep. De novo/performance concerns. Usage of anti-piracy software has raised questions about performance on some systems. Visual smoothing trade-offs. A few purists say the softened visual lines lose some of the original texture or grit. Ambiguity vs closure. The new ending's decisiveness has sparked varied emotional reactions from those who loved the original's mystery. Overall, it's being celebrated as a perfect remaster of a perfect game, with caveats. Square Enix has also hinted that if the remaster does well, they may revisit adding War of the Lions content or even create new tactical titles in Ivalice. One more note, the remaster team praised the fan community because without fan archive source code and data patches, it might not have been possible to reconstruct the original logic. So, is Final Fantasy Tactics The Ivalice Chronicles worth the hype and the wait? In my view, absolutely. It's a love letter to fans, a doorway for new players, and a remarkably careful balance between preservation and modernisation. If I had one wish, it's this. Someday see the War of the Lions editions come in as optional DLC, jobs, character cameos, so we can have the best of all versions. And beyond that, a new original tactical game in the spirit of Tactics, set in Ivalice's far future or in unexplored lands, building on its solid foundation. Let me know in the comments what you're most curious about, or what job builds you'd like to try out. If you enjoyed today's video, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on the bell notifications, and share with your friends. It all helps out tremendously. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.